Let's get right to it, and let's welcome in John Paul Morosi from JP Cam. And, John, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But earlier in the show, we talked about potentially Major League Baseball looking at altering the strike zone a little bit, coming up maybe in 2016. But pace of play is also a big-time issue here for the majors.
Yeah, a lot of things on the table right now, Fran. And I was told earlier this week that MLB and the MLBPA have made some progress on adopting some possible pace of play measures for the 2015 season. Obviously, both sides would want to get any modifications done by the time Grapefruit League and Cactus League games begin early next month. And it sounds like there will be at least some changes. Now, I think the rules that maybe both sides would agree upon the most probably involve making sure everyone's ready to play once the TV broadcast comes back from break. I do think the players may also be open-minded to the rules about keeping 1 foot in the batter's box, obviously during at-bat. So I think it's probably going to be subtle tweaks. Obviously, the pitch clock not going to happen for 2015, but it does sound to me, Fran, like there's going to be some agreement on this going forward. I also think the article by Jeff Passan about the changing strike zone, I think is really fascinating and has a lot of potential going forward, because I think as we talk about the different ways of changing the game, Fran, whether they're radical or simple, changing the strike zone is something that's been a part of the game as the game's history has gone on. There was a time when the AL and NL had different types of strike zones. So I think that's really a natural part of the game's evolution that I really think would get more action in the game. So maybe that will happen in time, not for this year, but for 2016.
You know, it's interesting, JP, talking about the evolution of the game. And, I referred earlier in the show about the Bach rule in 87 and 88. And as a player, I don't remember ever being consulted on that. I remember complaining, but I don't remember being consulted about it. So now with this new landscape of conversation with the union and with the ownership, have they discussed maybe the strike zone? Will that be a conversation with the players as well, or will that just be something that is with the umpires?
Well, according to Jeff Passan's report, Harold, it's going to be all three parties. The players, MLB, and the umpires union would all have a say-so in this because, of course, remember, the umpires, when they have their opportunity to come around and participate in the postseason, they're graded and rated based on their adherence to the strike zone, at least as home plate umpires, during the course of the season by Questac. So that's a huge part for the umpires. They're evaluated on how well they adhere to the strike zone. So I really think, Harold, and we've talked about this before, when you talk about the ways to improve the game, ways to engage young people in the product in general, what sounds like more fun to a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid? How well they're able to put the ball in play because the strike zone is now tighter and they have now a better chance to put the ball in play? Or how good is your plate discipline? Plate discipline does not sound like an exciting thing to a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid. It doesn't really engage the young audience, I don't think. Let's see, how good is your discipline, young man? Show me your discipline. No! Show me your athleticism. That's a much better way to frame the game and get kids involved in the sport. So I think, really, this is not just a pace of play thing, Harold. This is a goodness of the game, engaging young fans. This is really an overall important baseball topic. I think shrinking that strike zone down, Harold, gets more athleticism in the game, much better for baseball in the long run.
So I couldn't agree more. You know, and I think the one thing that we've eliminated by not having the high strike, you miss the hanging breaking balls. That's what you hit. Yes. And when you don't have a thought of swinging at a pitch high, you don't get those home runs. You don't get that extra base hit. Because the pitcher hangs it. You're supposed to hang it and bang it, right? And now we're not doing that as kids. And as Major League players.
It's a changing of the whole mentality. That's a great point, Harold. It's a changing of the whole mentality. And I think that if you shrink that strike zone down and you really incentivize aggressiveness, you're just going to see more athleticism on the field. You're going to see more action. I think that's really what this whole conversation is about. We can call it pace of play, but what it really is about is finding ways to get more action in that, whatever it's a 2-hour and 45-minute window or a 3-hour window or a 3-hour and 15-minute, however long that game is, let's get as much action in that frame as we can. And I think the more you incentivize good swings of the bat, and also keep in mind, I think, and you would speak to this better than me, Harold, that if that strike zone is a little bit tighter, okay, you're going to have more chances of it being a 2-1 count and a good swing as opposed to a 1-2 count and a defensive emergency hack. and that's going to create better contact, better overall gameplay, better action. That 2-1 to 1-2 swing based on the strike zone is a huge difference. And again, you know that better than me, but I think that's going to be one of the huge differences in the game if, in fact, this occurs in the next couple of years.
No, it just makes you more aggressive. I mean, even home run derby, look, where these guys are taking pitch after pitch after pitch, it's like put a clock on them. You know, you got 20 seconds to swing at 10 pitches, or else get out. You can't sit there and have 5 balls go by. Who wants to watch that?
Right. Exactly.
All right, so Fran's taking us to the next topic.
Yeah, Cole Hamels is a name that we'll be uttering every day until something happens or maybe something doesn't happen. What is the latest team, do you think, John or JP, who may have an interest here?
Well, Fran, I was told this week the Cubs have at least had some conversations with the Phillies on Cole Hamels, but I think their general approach to this is very indicative of the way a lot of teams are approaching it, which is, yes, the Cubs made an offer on James Shields, but I was told that was more of an opportunistic angle. They thought that Shields was undervalued in the marketplace, and they thought maybe they could buy low, get a bargain on a guy that they really value because of his durability, the innings pitched, what you just talked about with Ken a moment ago. With Hamels, I think there is a deal the Cubs would make for him. I think they do have the money to get him. It's just a question of where the prospect agreement comes in. And that, I think, Fran, speaks to the way the industry perceives the Phillies' position here. I think they know that Ruben Amaro Jr. has to make a trade with him, as Ken has pointed out. And when they feel as though Ruben Amaro Jr. is in a position of weakness there, that he really has to make a trade, you're not incentivized to put your best offer forward because you're hoping you're going to be able to get a desperate team to make a deal. So I think that's why the staring contest is going on right now. And I think an important point to think about here going forward, guys, is yes, Cole Hamels is a great trade chip right now. He'd probably be a great trade chip during spring training, although I can't recall ever this much money changing hands in a trade during spring training. It's almost never that you see this much money in a contract change hands in the month of March. But as we think about the season as it goes along, guys, remember, June, July, we have so many key pitchers entering free agency next offseason, whether it's a Johnny Cueto or a Samardzija or a Price or a Porcello, Giovanni Gallardo. Somebody, one of these guys in that group, will be playing for a team that's out of it, that has a disappointing season and does not make contention, is not a playoff team. So we're going to see a number of intriguing pitching names on the trade market. So if I'm the Phillies, there's a bit of a desperate period of time here where they may have to act sooner rather than later before the pitching market really gets saturated with all these other names that are going to be available on the trade market that are going to be free agents that are much cheaper from a salary standpoint. So, yes, the Phillies have the best chip out there, no question about it, but I'm not sure for how much longer that's going to be the case because Johnny Cueto may be out there in the month of July as well.
All right, the art of negotiating a deal. John Paul Morosi. Hey, happy Friday 13th and have a great weekend.